Toys R Us was at one point dominating the toy market and became the largest toy retailer in the USA, surpassing major competitors in 1984, while rapidly expanding, opening 236 stores and generating a solid revenue of $1.3 billion in annual sales in 1983 alone. When Toys R Us controlled up to 30% of US toy sales and had people lining up outside at midnight, they seemed completely unstoppable. However, fast forward to modern days, Toys R Us is barely keeping up, struggling under billions in debt. Despite once having over 1,500 stores worldwide, the company declared bankruptcy in 2017, liquidating all of its US operations in 2018. The depressing decline of what was once a big part of our childhood has inevitably affected many people emotionally. Now with such a drastic fall, it brings up a lot of questions. How did this happen? Will they ever make a comeback? But to understand the full story, we have to go back to the humble beginning. Now, if we go back to 1948, 3 years after World War II, the birth rate had increased a significant amount, jumping from 2.8 million in 1945 to 3.9 million in 1947. Now with this massive baby boom, the founder of Toys R Us, Charles Lazarus, saw this as an opportunity and started selling baby furniture in his father's shop in 1948. And later that same year, he opened his own store in Washington, D.C. called Children's Bargain Town, USA. Now he used to sell different kinds of baby gear, but it quickly became clear enough which one was getting the most attention.
I guess I discovered as we went on, by the time the second baby came, they didn't buy a new high chair, they didn't buy a new crib, they didn't buy a new bathing thing, but they did buy new toys.
What Charles also had noticed was that baby furniture was usually a one-time purchase, using baby furniture for one child or maybe even two and then never again. While toys were constantly being demanded, since kids grow up fast, their interest often changed, making them crave for new toys. Parents and relatives kept coming back. It became obvious that selling toys was a more profitable and sustainable business. As the business shifted its focus to toys, the name Children's Bargain Town no longer reflected on the store's main product, and by 1957, Charles had opened his first dedicated toy store in Rockville, Maryland, under the new and iconic name Toys R Us, with the R in the name spelled backwards, making it look like it was designed by a child. Being one of the first stores dedicated entirely to toys, Toys R Us immediately stood out from every other retailer at the time. Now, the store itself was an amazing experience for children. Bright colors everywhere, background music, a huge variety of different toys, no glass counters, no locked cabinets. Some locations even had demo areas where kids could try out toys or video games before even buying them. And with their iconic mascot, Jeffrey the Giraffe, it would make the brand even more lovable. And of course, their unforgettable iconic jingle that everybody knew by heart.
I don't wanna grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with. I don't wanna grow up,
I'm a Toys R Us kid.
they got the best for so much less.
You'll really flip your lid.
Some bikes to trains to video games. It's the biggest toy store there is. Gee whiz! I don't wanna grow up, cause baby if I did, I couldn't be a Toys R Us kid.
And since the prices were surprisingly affordable, it wouldn't be a problem for the parents either. Toys R Us influenced millions of childhoods, leaving kids with memories that would stay with them forever. Memories that years later would have people reminiscing about the good old days. And during the 70s, Toys R Us was truly starting to get serious traction. Charles was expanding Toys R Us nationwide throughout the 1970s. By 1978, Toys R Us was the largest toy retailer in the country with 182 stores generating $1 billion in sales. And around this period, Toys R Us earned the title of a category killer, which is when a store becomes so dominant at selling one type of product, it effectively wipes out all the smaller competitors. And there were good reasons why Toys R Us was simply better. They had more variety, lower prices, bigger stores, and better supply deals. And this made it hard for small businesses to compete. And over time, people stopped shopping at those places altogether and only shopped at Toys R Us. This made it extremely hard for other stores like KB Toys, which filed for bankruptcy in January 2004, closing more than 600 stores, and Lionel Kitty City, which filed for bankruptcy on June 14, 1991. However, it wouldn't be until the 1980s when it truly reached its prime. By 1980, Toys R Us had earned a solid reputation as a retailer of great efficiency. Their sales had more than doubled to nearly $750 million in fiscal 1981. The brand continued its fast expansion, opening 236 stores in 1983 alone. And this boosted the US market share from around 5% to 14%. And between 1980 and 1985, the toy industry grew roughly 37%. But Toys R Us sales had surged 185%. And this was also the period where they became international. They expanded their brand to 25 countries, most notable countries being Canada, the United Kingdom, and Germany, and the United States being the home market, having 101 stores with $750 million in annual sales, which after sales grew in the mid-80s, went up to $4.4 billion, with approximately 233 stores. And they also had captured 25% of the $13 billion of the US toy market. Canada, being the first international expansion in 1984, had launched with 4 stores, and by 1988, Toys R Us had already opened 71 Canadian stores. And while there's no concrete revenue numbers from 1984, it did achieve more than $1 billion Canadian in annual sales in the late 2010s. Then you have the United Kingdom, who entered in 1985, had already grown to over 100 stores in 1990, with an estimated revenue between £200 million to £400 million at its height in the early 90s. And then we have Germany, with their first store in 1986, eventually had around 66 stores across Germany by the late 1980s. And while the revenue is difficult to pinpoint exactly during the 80s, it is estimated to be between 200 and 300 million euros annually, and with the brand expanding to more than 29 countries, with over 1,500 stores worldwide at its peak in the early 2000s, and the annual revenue surpassing $11 billion globally between the 1990s and the 2000s, it is safe to say that Toys R Us completely owned the toy market in the entire world. Now, even though Toys R Us would hold the title for a long time, trouble began to emerge during the 1990s. Now, there are 3 major factors that led to the company's eventual downfall: a rise of competitors, failure to adapt to e-commerce, and crippling debt. Starting off with competition. Now, despite its dominance, the company started facing serious threats when merchants like Walmart and Target realized how lucrative toys were, and they expanded their toy selection. Walmart used something called loss leader pricing. They sold their toys at lower prices, making it a lot more comfortable to purchase from Walmart instead of Toys R Us. In an article published on March 30, 1999, was officially confirmed that Walmart has successfully overtaken Toys R Us. It was the first time in more than a decade that Toys R Us was dethroned. Walmart sales accounted for 17.4% of the market in 1998, while Toys R Us held a 16.8% share in 1997. Now, if you think about it, it's fairly understandable when you realize that Walmart simply has a lot more different options than just toys. It's a matter of convenience for a lot of people. Parents don't have the luxury to just shop for toys. It's easier just to go to Walmart, where they can do the rest of their shopping and still get the best toys. But the biggest game change came from Amazon, which allowed people to order toys online and have them delivered right to their homes with even better prices. Now, at that time, why would you purchase toys from Toys R Us when you can simply do that from the comfort of your home with a cheaper price? And this leads into the second major issue. All of these competitors adapted to new technology and e-commerce, which Toys R Us failed to do. Amidst the rising tides of e-commerce, this business world going global and games converting to online, Toys R Us failed to adjust and adapt. When times are changing fast, the big companies stayed pretty much the same. And instead of working and investing on their own website, they instead made a deal with Amazon, which they would later regret. Toys R Us entered a 10-year partnership with Amazon to be Amazon's exclusive seller of toys. They also had to pay Amazon $50 million a year plus a percentage of sales. Then later on, Amazon also included Toys R Us competitors, which was a violation of the agreement by allowing third-party toy sales, which which ultimately led to a lawsuit. And while they did successfully win the lawsuit, the money that they won in court could not make up for the years it had lost in developing its own online presence and e-commerce strategy. And when Toys R Us finally launched their own website, it was too late to make any difference, and it was written with technical errors which frustrated customers. However, the worst and probably the most damaging event was their levered buyout. In 2005, Toys R Us was taken private in a $6.6 billion levered buyout by Bain Capital, KKR, and Vornado. You see, the problem was that they used $1.3 billion of their own money and borrowed the remaining $5.3 billion, which was about 80% of the deal. And this led Toys R Us into some serious debt, which ultimately destroyed the business almost completely. After the levered buyout, Toys R Us was paying between $400 million and $500 million per year, which completely blocked them from being able to invest in the future, while competitors like Amazon and Walmart were building fast websites, improving delivery systems, and creating mobile apps, because they simply didn't have the choice to invest in new technology. The company was struggling to stay afloat for years until the year 2018, which was for Toys R Us probably the worst year ever. In 2018, Toys R Us decided to completely liquidate all US stores, which was about 885 locations. They didn't just close a high amount of stores, they shut down every single location in the United States. This eliminated over 33,000 jobs in the US alone, and obviously the workers weren't happy.
U.S. workers, meantime, from across the country gathered at Union, New Jersey location today to demand severance for employees who are losing their jobs.
And fight for what's right.
But it's even more depressing when you realize that the liquidation was after they filed for bankruptcy, which they stated was a way to relieve itself of billions of dollars in order to keep its business alive. But with their sales not improving, being far behind competitors followed by a liquidation, it's safe to say that their recovery attempt completely failed. Well, even though it seems like Toys R Us is completely gone, there are still some positive points worth mentioning. First and foremost, the liquidation only happened in the United States. There are about 300 stores still open across Asia and 36 stores in Canada. 3 stores have opened in the United States ever since their liquidation. The first one was opened in 2021, the second one was opened in 2023, and the most recent one was opened in 2024. But these are the standalone stores. It became even better when Toys R Us announced a partnership with Macy's to revive the Toys R Us brand in the US, making them go all in on small format and significantly increase their footprints in the coming years. Macy's said it plans to expand its small format store footprint with as many as 30 more locations, and continuing the expansion through the fall of 2025. Now, this very much shows that even after it seemed like the damage was irreversible, Toys R Us looks like it has a promising future, and whether Toys R Us will actually make a comeback or not is for time to decide. And even though they closed hundreds of Toys R Us stores, leaving almost everything behind, the beautiful memories of millions is something that cannot be taken.